So I'm going to demonstrate today how to paint in layers of marks. In this case I'm painting hair, which is what I usually paint. But we're using marks as a way to create texture, dimensionality, and movement in the hair that I'm going to be painting. So what I've done first is I've mixed up my palette that I'm going to be using for this painting. And in a way it's a mixture of analogous colors, but they're sort of groups into different groups of analogous mixtures. The way I mixed this palette was I started off actually with my lowest key, and in this case it's sap green and alizarin crimson mixed together, which gives you a lovely cool dark brown, almost a black. Into that I mixed some Veronese green, which cooled off the mixture more. And then I took some of that mixture and mixed in some English red. Then took that mixture and mixed in more English red. Then took that mixture and mixed in orange. After mixing in the orange, I then took the mixture and added some cad yellow medium. And then from that mixture I mixed up this color, which was this mixture with Naples yellow light. Here I mixed in more Naples yellow light, and finally I mixed in Kremnitz white. So my palette is very uniform and it's very harmonious, and that's what I want. And what I do is when I go to paint, I just pick up some of that color actually onto the brush, and then with my liner brush, which is what I'm using, I just use my medium to alter the viscosity of the paint so that I can paint very precise lines onto my linen. So the technique that I've been using on this painting here is a mixture of wet into wet painting and then wet strokes into dry painting. You'll see what's left out here is the underpainting in which I gestured out the entire shape of the whole head that I was painting. Now, I am a firm believer in massing out and gesturing out your forms before you do any type of detail work. And although you can see, like, I paint right over that whole gestural painting that's there, that gesture is super important to me in terms of helping me to establish the forms and shapes that I wish to investigate with these more precise brushstrokes. If I had this painting started and I was just trying to do the process that I'm doing now without the underpainting underneath, I fear that I would get lost and I wouldn't be able to place my curls and all these lovely textures in accurately without that gestural painting underneath. So what I did the other day was, for instance, over here on this sort of spiral, I did a number of values and colors in the hair that are down the lower keys. And I want to keep this part of the hair in shadow and keep it pushed down so that this part comes forward and this recedes. But I still want to maybe highlight a few little spots in here in a little bit. What I'm going to focus on first is bringing some highlights into some of these areas here. Once I've sort of touched this area up with my last layers of paint, then I can go ahead and go into these last few sections to do my my dark low key values, and then come back again to paint my higher keys on top of that. So I have my liner brush, and you'll see that when I paint with this brush that it's almost, for me, like using a pencil, and I can add the strokes like I would with a pencil to the painting. The medium that I'm using is a medium that is 1/3 Damar varnish, 1/3 turpentine, and 1/3 linseed oil. This is probably my most favorite medium. I prefer it to the alkyd mediums because I find the alkyd mediums get a bit gummy. And it's hard to do these types of techniques for me with those mediums. So that's all the sort of highlights I want to put in, and right here I'm actually now going to paint some other values right into that wet paint. So I just went and changed colors, and one of the things real important is that you need to make sure you clean your brush between changing colors, because any type of mixture that you want that, I think, to happen on the painting rather than in your brush. So now I'm just going to build these layers of marks coming through the dry paint I already have. But I'm also using it as a tool to sort of blend the paint I just put down, which was the highest key paint that I've got. And that's letting these areas sort of sing in terms of their intensity against these other darker areas. So when you paint the when you paint the wet strokes into the dry strokes, your stroke is going to remain a bit more visible than when you're painting wet into wet, because when you're painting wet into wet, then they're going to blend more. So I like to have a mixture. This is also when I like to do like my loose strands of hair. To add that extra little bit of dimensionality. I have a bit of a darker color, and I'm just going to come through and add some value shifts to those wisps I just brought through. And that helps to give the sense of light movement on those strands, those individual strands that make them believable. And then here I'm going to pull some of this darker orange brown through those light areas that we just put in. It's a lot of sort of painting and then going over what you painted and then going back that I suppose because I must be mad, that I really enjoy. I enjoy building up the surface and letting that mixture of line and color come forward to create the sense of dimensionality and texture that I'm seeking. To be able to do this, you have to think about and know how light moves around forms. So I'm afraid to go back and say it, but again, you know, the egg is really vital because in that simple form we see and learn the way that light moves and bends around dimensional objects, and then when we break it and draw it, seeing how light moves around the convex and concave elements for those objects. So even though I have a photograph, I tend to just work from my understanding of light logic as I build up the painting and think about the way that light is going to move through the space and affect the forms I'm painting.